Thank you for joining us for our deep dive into the 2024 elections. I'm Nefesha Israel, and we are going to be led in this session by Dan who is on the call with us today. And so we are going to get through some housekeeping before we get started with Dan. And let's see, the first slide that we have here, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Acknowledge the indigenous land you reside on if you'd like, and share a link if you'd like to, so people can learn more about the indigenous land. I am on the unceded ancestral land of the Yokuts. And this event is being recorded. The recording slides and all resources will be shared with registrants. So, and there's link outs in the recording slides, so you'll be able to access them also. Some meeting guidelines just to keep us focused. Questions are welcome at all time. We will have a section for Q&A, but if you ask any questions, then you can we can answer them throughout. Please avoid buzzwords and explain references and acronyms. We always like to remind people that not everyone knows all of the acronyms, so it's just a good practice. And we ask that you be respectful of your fellow advocates here today by honoring perspectives in the chat. And let's see. These slides were actually drafted by our arts and health consultant, Jen, who I think is on the call right now. So like to use these for most of our Zooms, just so that people know. If you'd like to use the closed captioning, you can click the button that's on the bar at the bottom. If you're on your computer, you're going to see that, and it says closed captioning. You can hit that little up arrow symbol to view and adjust your caption settings. And there's also a link out if you need to update your Zoom version, which you might want to do after you're done. A few other Zoom tidbits and tips. You can click the view button in the upper right corner. Select the side-by-side selections here. You can see speaker, gallery, or multi-speaker, and hover your cursor on the vertical gray line. Then you can click and drag so that you have less or more viewing capabilities there. And this is also, if you'd like to save the chat, you can save the chat. We usually try to share the chat out after or in our follow-up email, but if you'd like to save the chat, you can do that also by clicking those three little buttons at the top. All right, a little bit of information I think a lot of people probably know, but I will just review for any people that are unfamiliar with our organization, CA for the Arts, or our partnering organization, CA Arts Advocates. CA Arts Advocates is a comprehensive lobbying organization. That's our 501c3. As you see, it's been around since 1996, and we've been doing work in advocacy and public policy and public investment. And in CA for the Arts, established 2007, that's where we focus on our programming, services, and advocacy networks. And that's our 501c3. All right. And I just want to introduce Dan, who has taken the time to join us today. Dan manages strategic partnerships at CalMatters, a nonprofit publication focused on California's statewide issues. Previously, Dan was the executive director of the Yappie, a nonprofit publication focused on AAPI political news. Through his service on the board of the Lion Publishers and the Glen Nelson Center at American Public Media Group, Dan is focused on supporting local news across the country. So Dan, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to pass the mic over to you. We're going to switch our screens out here so that Dan can share his screen as he goes through the voter guide with CalMatters.
Thank you, Nefesha. Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me all right? This is great to see everyone here, everyone in the chat. Please introduce yourself. I really enjoy reading through and seeing where you guys are from and what your positions are. I'm Dan, based in San Francisco, so land of the Ohlone. I actually am doing 40 of these events across the state. So currently I am in San Bernardino, going all over the place. I'll admit I don't know who the native indigenous here are, but doing an event tonight in Riverside and going around the state. This is the first virtual session of these CalMatters, what we're calling Voting Matters, the series, where we teach people about the state ballot propositions. And the goal of this event is to be as interactive as possible. But since we're doing this on Zoom, we're going to use the chat function for most of this interaction. So just stay engaged, be ready to type things, share things, and I will probably read some of the things out from chat as you share. So I will share my screen.
You guys want to take a free picture? Oh, nice. All right, cool. You guys watch Succession? They look like they watch Succession. Yeah. Did you watch Succession on HBO?
Is someone talking?
We're hearing, yeah, some background noise.
Yeah, if you are not muted, please mute. I'll also go through and try to mute as we go. Thank you.
Dan, I think you're muted.
Now, Dan, you're muted.
Sorry, I don't know why it automatically muted me. So I was just saying, welcome to Wonky Wednesday. I'm Dan. I got my start in political reporting a few years ago. And this was me one day at the US Capitol reporting on Congress. Does anyone know who this person on the left, this gentleman that has walked by me, does anyone know who that is? And you can just guess, type the name in the chat. Okay, you guys are fast. It is Mitch McConnell. How did you guys know? It's the chin. So I, as a nonpartisan journalist, I won't be speaking too much about his politics right now, but I will say this is an observation, a nonpartisan observation, that Mitch McConnell does not smile that much. There's a gray box covering. Oh, is that the chat? Okay. I think the chat is the gray box.
It looks like it is the chat.
That sounds good. Okay, then I'll tune into the chat, or Nefesha or Terry, if you can monitor the chat for me. So it's McConnell. He doesn't smile that much, but this one day he was walking through the hallway and he looked at me and he smiled at me. And I was like, what is going on? I felt like I had been chosen in some sort of way. He kept going on, and my stunned reaction is there. There was a New York Times photographer from across the hallway who took this picture, and that is the story of how I ended up on the front page of the New York Times. So today we'll be talking about politics. We'll keep it civil. I'll be going back and forth. Between chat, we'll be talking about the ballot proposition. Sometimes these state and local measures impact us a lot more than things going on at the national level. And using the raise hand function, or you could type yes in chat. I just want to see if I want to get to know you guys a bit better and help you get to know each other a little bit better. So I will probably open up the chat box to the side. You'll see that gray bar, but the text will be on the left side here, if that's okay. So raise your hand or type in chat if you get the news in some form every day. And okay, I'll have the chat box up over here on this side. So this is great. Getting the news, this could be, it doesn't need to be politics and doom and gloom all the time. This could be, you know, entertainment news. It can be sports. It can be arts and culture. It could be a lot of different things. It just means you're staying plugged in to in what's going on in your community. So is this anyone's first presidential election? I always like to ask, I do some of these sessions with college students. Of course, there's many more hands that go up, but I've been surprised at seeing older folk at some of my events also raise their hand. So Tracy, congratulations to your son for his first presidential election. That's very exciting. Sometimes intimidating. So I hope you're there to, you know, guide him through it, and maybe even like fill out ballots together, things like that. Raise your hand if you have ever persuaded someone to see an issue differently through talking to them, and maybe even change their vote. And if anyone wants to type in chat the story of when this happened, if you could keep it brief, 1 or 2 sentences, that would be really cool. But the main thing is what I've seen through doing these events is, it takes a long time to talk to people to make any progress, to have someone see something differently. A lot of times it's between different generations, different family members, and sometimes they will also change your mind on an issue. That's okay. I think democracy works best when we are talking to each other, when we can get this interaction. And usually social media isn't the most conducive to that. Social media is great for a lot of things, but it can also keep us in our bubbles. It can inflame tensions. Raise your hand if you know for a fact that you're registered to vote. And this should be most people because, and I see the numbers going up. This is great because California makes it very easy to register. You just got your ballot yesterday. That's fantastic. I'll say that I am from New Jersey. I moved to California a couple months ago, but I'm still registered to vote in New Jersey. Partially because I saw, how many ballot propositions we have going on, 10 at the state level. Depending on where you are, that you have more at the county level, more at the city level. And I looked at it, I was like, nope, this is a lot. So I'm here to teach you about it, but I won't be voting directly on these. And if you don't know whether or not you're registered to vote, here are some of the key election dates going on. So yesterday, October 7th, very important day because every registered voter in California receives their ballot in the mail yesterday or in the next couple days. It might take a bit. So we receive our ballot in the mail automatically. You can fill it out and mail it back. You can fill it out and drop it off at a drop box. Usually your local library will have one, or library is usually the main one I go to. Or you could go in person and vote on November 5th. You can also mail your ballot on November 5th, although I wouldn't advise waiting that late, but you could, as long as it's postmarked by November 5th and they receive it by November 12th, they will count it. But that's part of the reason why sometimes it takes a couple days for the full results to be counted. And if it's close, people see the numbers changing days after election day itself. That's part of the reason why things like that can happen. So we'll do a bit of trivia, and I'm going to open the chat back up on my right side. So we'll cover the screen a little bit, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page with some basic statewide information. And so I'll have a couple trivia questions. So just feel free to type it in chat as soon as you know the answer. So the first question is and we'll start off with a really easy one. Who are the major party vice presidential candidates this year? Is it Harris and Pence? Is it Walz and Vance? Is it Pelosi and McCarthy? Or is it Taylor Swift and Kid Rock? And in the chat, we're ready. We have, everyone knows this. It feels like it is Tim Walz and JD Vance. So Harris, Biden, after stepping down from pursuing the candidacy for president on the Democratic side, his vice president, Kamala Harris, stepped up, and she had about 2 weeks to choose her VP candidate. She chose governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and Trump has chosen Ohio Senator JD Vance. So no, it is not Taylor Swift or Kid Rock. Okay. This is fun. These are about to get much harder. How many state Senate seats are up for re-election? Anyone know off the top of their head? Don't go looking it up. So is it 15, 20, 45, or 60? Okay. Jennifer says 15. It is not 15. Complete guess 20. 20 is correct. So just as at the national level, we have the Senate and the House, at the state level, we have the state Senate And we don't call it the state house, we call it the state assembly. So there are 80 seats in the state assembly, and all 80 are up for re-election, no matter where you are. And then there are 40 seats in the state senate, and half of them, which means 20, are up for re-election. So good job on that complete guess, Tracy. Outside of voting on elected office for people, we also go and choose yes or no on ballot propositions. And these are issues that, for one reason or another, the state legislature either doesn't have the power to or doesn't want to decide on this. They put it to the people to decide. And every ballot proposition to pass just needs to pass by a yes 50%. So if more than half the people vote yes, then it passes. So there's several different ways a ballot proposition can appear on the ballot, and which one of these is not one of those ways. So being put there by the state legislature, a petition by registered voters, automatic for state constitutional amendments, or an executive action by the governor. Let's see if anyone knows this. Okay, so you guys are pretty good. Executive action, tax increase measures that require 67% from the voters. So state legislature is the main body that decides these things. And then usually if they don't want something passed, we can have a petition by registered voters, which is both empowering because we can, overrule the state legislature if we get enough signatures. But that is also a system that can be abused if, a large corporation can pay a lot of money, pay a certain number of dollars per signature to stand in front of grocery stores and collect signatures and things like that for them to push something onto the ballot. I'm with a 67%, I'm probably thinking about the state constitutional amendments because that has to go through the state legislature, both the state senate and the state assembly, by a 2/3 margin first. So maybe it probably needs to go through them by the 2/3 margin first. But then when it comes to the people as a ballot measure, I believe it is 50%. But I will double check on that. So some of these, a bill usually goes through the state legislature first and then gets signed by the governor. But some of the tougher ones, state constitutional amendments, have to pass the state legislature by 2/3 first and then come to the people as a ballot measure that gets passed at 50%. So the governor by himself cannot unilaterally decide this. Obviously, the governor can put pressure on the state legislature to put something on the ballot, but cannot by himself just sign something and make this happen. Okay, so I will tell you a quick little bit about CalMatters, which is the publication I work for. CalMatters is a nonprofit and nonpartisan publication that covers statewide issues. Nonprofit means, what is nonprofit news? Journalism, especially local news across the country, has been struggling for the better part of 20 years now. And nonprofits have been around forever, but nonprofit news is a pretty new way of running a news organization. So it means we don't have a paywall on our site ever. It's free and accessible to everyone. We don't sell subscriptions, and there also is very minimal ads on our website. So how do we keep the lights on? We keep it on through donations. We keep it on through grants and support from foundations, and we keep it through memberships and things like that. So that ensures us to keep our coverage free and accessible to everyone, no matter your level of access to other news that you would have to pay for. Nonpartisan means we won't take a side on these issues, but we will give you all the information you need to make your own decision. So nonpartisan will tell you exactly who is supporting and against each ballot measure. will tell you a lot of these ballot measures are worded very weirdly, where you might think yes is no and no means yes. And that is intentional with the confusion and the way they word that. So we'll give it to you straight in terms of, hey, this is what we think this means. And you'll have all the information to decide for yourself. So our website is calmatters.org. And the main thing we do are these investigative stories. It's our reporting. The journalism we've done has exposed corruption and abuse in healthcare systems and things like that. And the state legislature reads the stuff and then has introduced bills based off of the things we've reported. And the main thing I'm here to talk about today is our voter guide. So CalMatters is voter guide. That is the link there. And I also will send it in the chat. And I will. Here we go. I will send that in the chat and then we can take a look at the voter guide together here.
And Dan, if you could turn, there you go.
Is this good?
Yeah, you're
keep
not
the box to
covering
the
any of the good parts.
Okay. And hopefully this is large enough for everyone to see. So right at the top of our voter guide, you can see the key election dates are right there. That is where I grabbed that from. And then we have this handy tool that is find your local races. So if you click into this, that's what this tab here is. Okay, so you will be dropping those links. That's good. You'll see what's on your local ballot. So what this is a tool that will, our goal with this tool, and it's not fully built out, but our goal with it is that you can have your ballot on one side and then you can enter your address and have this open on the other side and just go through everything one by one. That's our ideal future with this tool. I'll show you where it is at right now. It's almost there, but not quite. We don't store your address. This is entirely for you. So I have an address in, I'll type in CalMatters' address, which is 1303 J Street in Sacramento. This is where CalMatters' office is. And so you can see right at the top, we have everything that we'll be voting on other outside of the national level. So it starts with our Senate race that's going on. CalMatters in Sacramento is in House District 7. And as I said, half of the state Senate seats are up for re-election. So that part of Sacramento is in one of the districts without a state Senate re-election, but there is a state assembly election. And then we have 10 propositions this year. I will skip them for now because this is what we'll talk about in a second, but all 10 also show up right here. And then you'll see, you should type in your own address and see what's going on, but we have the mayor's race in Sacramento, we have city council, and then you can see there's city level measures that are being passed too in Sacramento. My favorite part of the voter guide is back on the homepage when we scroll down a bit, we have a bit of background, but then we have this tool that's the fundraising tool. And the fundraising tool shows you exactly who is giving money, donating money into the election, to where, and what side they're on. So we can see the top contributor to the election this cycle has been the California Apartment Association that has donated $130 million across 45 campaigns, which is both ballot measures and people running for office. And this has been interesting to watch because I did my first one of these events 3-4 weeks ago. And 3-4 weeks ago, they had given about $65 million. And then a couple weeks later, I came back on and I was presenting this and they had given 75 and then $80 million. And so over the course of the past couple of weeks, I've watched each of these numbers tick up slowly. The Apartment Association is now at $130 million given. So the main thing I'm here to talk about today is the ballot propositions, because we have 10 of them, and usually voting for a candidate for office is a bit more straightforward. Some of these propositions are what really confuses people and require some time to think about. These are very complex issues that the legislature just puts to the people to be like, hey, you decide. There's several different types of ballot propositions. So the first type of ballot proposition is a bond measure. And a bond measure is just when the state wants to borrow a huge chunk of money to do something big. So we can see Proposition 2 is borrow $10 billion to build schools and colleges. And immediately we can, the top line sounds good. Everyone's in support of schools and colleges. But then you dig into it and you're thinking, okay, borrow 10 billion from who, right? And when are we paying it back? And building schools and colleges, which schools, which colleges? So you can read into each bond measure about where the money actually goes. Sometimes it's a bit more specific, sometimes it's a bit more vague. So for example, with Prop 2, they want to set aside 8.5 billion towards K-12 schools, and then 1.5 billion to community colleges. But even in that process, some of the events I've done are at community colleges, and the money doesn't just automatically go to them. They need someone at the college to then propose a grant to the state to retrieve these funds, right? About where the money will go. So it requires a lot of detail, and it takes some time for the money to actually get to where it's supposed to go. The borrow 10 billion part, they would raise the money through bonds. They issue these bonds that has to be paid back by the state, and paying back by the state means paying it back with taxpayer money. So because this is a pretty significant thing for that would come out of our pockets, then it comes to the people to decide. So another of these bond measures that's happening this election is Proposition 4, which is borrow $10 billion to respond to climate change, right? So similar, they want $10 billion, and then we can see the buckets of areas of money that they want to give the money towards. So it says 3.8 billion for water and groundwater, 1.5 billion for wildfire. Each of these you can read into more specifically. Sometimes there's specific projects already outlined, like a couple $100 million to help build up one of the ports in Eureka was one example in this. Yeah, but sometimes these measures come up and it's actually not too specific how exactly the money will be distributed. Another type of ballot proposition we have this cycle is a constitutional amendment. So Proposition 3 is one of these constitutional amendments. So every time we change the state constitution, that's a very serious thing. So it has to come to the people to decide yes or no. And right now in California's state constitution, marriage is defined as between a man and a woman. And this is because of a previous proposition passed in 2008, right? So because of this previous proposition that 50% of voters voted yes on, the marriage is now defined as between a man and a woman in the state of California. But that's not active. It's not in effect because at the national level, same-sex marriage is legal. And so that overrides anything at the state level. But for example, if that was to go away at the national level through something like a Supreme Court case, then it would revert back to the state level automatically. And so that's the current law on the books. There's people that want this to change, even though it isn't in effect right now. There's people who want to change this in the state constitution. So it needs to come to us to decide yes or no on. So there's 10 of these here today. And right now I want to share with you a link, which is this folder. So we'll walk through Proposition 32, 33, and if we have time, 36 today. But if we can share this link, which is the Drive folder, this has our quizzes in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. And we'll start with Proposition 32. So Proposition 32, I like to start our discussion portion with this one because it's a bit more clear cut. Pretty much voting yes means raise the minimum wage. Voting no means don't raise it to 18 an hour. And on our voter guide, you can see for every single proposition, we have a section that says, what would it do? What does yes mean? What does no mean? Then we also have information on why is it on the ballot. And these don't come out of a vacuum. Each of these has some history on how it actually got to in front of us on the ballot. We also have a prop quiz for every single proposition. And so the PDF, the Drive link that Terry shared in the chat, is the printout versions of these prop quizzes. So these are resources that are free for anyone to use, to copy, to reproduce without modification. But in classrooms, in libraries, wherever you might be, the prop quizzes, we have the printout version, and then we have the online version here. And we can see that, as I was saying about our fundraising tool, we show you exactly who is for this, who is against it, and how much money they've raised on each side. So this one is a little even. We have 600,000 raised for it from groups like the Labor Federation. We have 400,000 raised against it from some business groups like the Chamber of Commerce and the Restaurant Association. So what I want us to do now is for every single ballot proposition, CalMatters has also produced a Props in a Minute video, and we also have a link there to share. That's a playlist of all of our videos. We have the videos for all 10 propositions in English and Spanish. And I want us to watch this video together, and then I'll probably keep it on this screen with the printout, and I want people to share in chat what they think about it using the printout as a guide. So I'll play the video here. I'll close this out for a second.
For years, low-wage workers organized around a $15 minimum wage. But by the time California got there in 2022, it already didn't seem enough. The cost of living had skyrocketed. Startup investor and anti-poverty advocate Joe Sandberg wanted a gradual increase to $18 in 2025, but his measure missed a deadline 2 years ago, so it's before voters now. A lot has changed since then. I'm Jeannie Kwong, Capitol reporter for CalMatters, and this is Prop 32 in a minute. If it passes, it would have a smaller impact than envisioned. In the past 2 years, many businesses have raised wages on their own. Inflation pushed the minimum wage up to $16 this year, and workers in healthcare and fast food have won their own minimum wages beyond $18. But Sandberg, unions, and other advocates say Prop 32 will still help 2 million workers get a raise and afford the basics. According to the MIT Living Wage Calculator, the average single Californian with no children needs to make more than $27 an hour to afford basic needs. Business groups, restaurant owners, and grocers are opposed. They say employers who can't stay afloat will have to cut workers' hours or raise prices. They point to surveys in West Hollywood, where the minimum wage is $19.08, as an example. Now, that is one city. In a recent statewide study, economists have found less evidence that wage hikes cause job losses. So vote yes on Prop 32 if you want to raise the minimum wage to $18 next year. Vote no if you want to keep things the way they are. To learn more about everything on your 2024 ballot, go to calmatters.org.
Okay, so I will keep the screen on this page here for Prop 32. But you can also open this on your own. That will probably be best. So I'm in just the English version. I scroll down to the page for Prop 32. And I'll give us 5 minutes or so to read through it, to decide how you feel on this. And then please share in chat some of your thoughts on this proposition. Yeah, so the prompt is just feel free to share in chat what you think about Prop 32 raising or not raising the minimum wage. And we'll use the CalMatters printout as a guide. So that's in the link that Terry shared, the PDF for props quizzes, if you want to open that on your own. Where would the COLA index be drawn from? That's a good question. So this is something where the the cost of living definitely varies from place to place around the state. It's a very big state. We're larger than Japan. And so there was the figure in the video that said, the average in the state is $27 an hour, is, according to one study, $27 an hour is what is considered to be a living wage for someone who isn't even raising a family, right? And then there's some places definitely you could go to in the state where 27 an hour still isn't enough to make ends meet. And then there's other places where you're probably fine with that much. So this is an interesting proposition in that, the businesses, the grocers, restaurants, of course, will say this will cause inflation. That it doesn't actually, cost of living will increase, and then this will keep increasing. It'll be a vicious cycle. At one of my events in Chico that I did, there were restaurant owners in the room who raised their hand and said, "Hey, if this passes, I will have to lay off staff, right? I'll have to cut people's hours." And then at another one of these events I did in San Fernando, it was at a bar. We did the event at a bar, and the bar owner was there. And she said, I actually already pay my people more than 20 an hour. And that if you can't afford to be paying people that much, then she was like, you shouldn't be in business, right? So there's different, what I've seen firsthand, at least from doing these events from different places, is that it definitely varies from place to place, what is feasible and what isn't. And that's something about the state ballot propositions too, is that, this goes for the whole state. That when we decide it, we're deciding it for everywhere in California. And one quick point about the research too that has come up with this is, opponents of this proposition will point to one set of research that says, hey, increasing minimum wage increases inflation. And then people who support this will point to a different set of research that says, raising the minimum wage doesn't increase inflation. And sometimes they're looking at different areas where the studies were done. So it is up to us to do a bit of our own research, to look at those, the numbers that they give, and to check it for ourselves. Okay, so would you be comfortable with a quick poll of the chat or of the room on how we feel about this? So I'll ask you to just type in chat support, against, or undecided on this one. Okay. So a lot of supports, and this one is an easier one to start with because it's pretty clear what yes and no means. Support, some undecided. Okay, so let's go on to a harder one. I think Prop 33 is a trickier one because this one isn't as simple as yes to increase rent control and no to decrease or remove rent control. This one is about this power dynamic between the state and local governments on who gets to decide the limits on rent control. We can see there's a lot more money raised in this one than the last one. So there's almost $44 million that has been raised for this and 119 million raised against this. So people are these groups are pouring a lot of money to get their voices heard on this. And where is this money going? It's going into ads on TV, into mailers that show up in your mailbox. Those are some of the groups that are for and against. And just like the last one, we'll play the video.
The rent is too damn high. You've likely heard that refrain as millions of Californians struggle to pay. So, what should we do about it? That will be a question on your ballot this November. Hi, I'm Marisa Kendall, homelessness reporter for CalMatters, and this is Prop 33 in a minute. Many California cities limit how much a landlord can raise rent each year. That's called rent control. 3 decades ago, lawmakers limited those limits. Basically, cities can't impose rent control on single-family homes or apartments built after 1995. That's because of a law known as Costa-Hawkins. Prop 33 would change that, letting cities impose whatever rent control they want. Sound familiar? We've been here before, twice. Similar ballot measures failed in 2018 and 2020. Supporters of Prop 33 say cities should be able to decide whether and how to cap rents. Opponents argue rent control makes rental housing less lucrative, leading to fewer homes getting built. So, vote yes if you want your city to be able to expand rent control. Vote no if you want the state to continue to limit rent control. To learn more about everything in your 2024 ballot, go to calmatters.org.
Okay, so just like the last one, I will leave this on the Prop 33 page over here, and we can discuss it in the chat. Immediate reactions, thoughts on what this will do. So what's really interesting about this is, it's about the power between state and local government. Right now, local governments can't impose rent controls on these houses, single-family homes, or the apartments after 1995. And so if this passes, it gives local governments more power, probably more flexibility to decide on local rent controls. It takes it away from the state. Yeah.
And
And yes, go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I created a poll for this one, so we can get feedback that way.
Go ahead.
Way easier. And you should see that pop up on your screen, everyone.
I'll see it. I'll try to keep it out of the way of this. And some things to think about with rent control is, usually it's structured in a way where a landlord can increase rent on a property each year by a certain percentage plus inflation. So if it's 5% plus inflation and inflation is 5%, then that landlord is allowed to increase rent by 10% that year. And for a lot of people, that already is still too much of an increase each year, 10% year over year. At the same time, what you see in some places is that someone older might be locked into a rent-controlled property for over 20 to 30 years. And so their rent only has increased this much. And now they're essentially trapped in that property. They can't move to somewhere else, even if they want to, because, they would have to enter at market rates, which would be much higher. And so that's not good that they can't move out, things like that. And then also we see young people who can't move in because then they have to enter at market price and they don't have the money to do that. So that's one side of this. Another side of it, obviously, is that, I think everyone would agree we don't want landlords to just be able to double rent overnight, and that seems to be very predatory. Like, just because all of a sudden there is demand for a place, does that mean they can just push out the existing tenants and open up that room for people who want to come in? What the business groups say about this, of course, is that, the business groups are like, hey, we can't make as much money off of a property, so why would we want to build at all if this is not something we can make money off of? And then they say, you know, if we build less, then the housing crisis will actually be worse because according to them, the problem isn't the rent itself, it's that there isn't enough supply, right? Housing supply. So many different sides to this. And I see in the poll so far, it's split pretty evenly between support and undecided. Nefesha, I'll go quickly through Prop 36 as well, and then that will give you, and then we'll have the rest of the time to go through your final couple slides, if that sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so 36 is about increasing penalties for theft and drug trafficking, essentially reclassifying some misdemeanors as felonies in order to increase punishment, to deter people from, you know, smash and grabbing, to force some people into treatment that might otherwise not seek treatment on their own. But as we'll get into later, you know, there's more to it than just that. So really quickly, that's the money for and against. And we'll watch the video.
10 years ago, Californians rejected the war on drugs. Instead of long sentences in overcrowded prisons for drug possession and shoplifting, voters chose to make those crimes misdemeanors. But prosecutors, the police, and big box retailers say those changes have made crime worse. In November, voters get to choose. Do they think harsher sentences will prevent crime? And would imposing them really cut down on homelessness? I'm Nigel Duara, justice reporter with CalMatters, and this is Prop 36 in a minute. Way back in the 2000s, California's government had a problem. Years of three-strike laws had filled prisons beyond their capacities. In 2014, voters passed Prop 47. It made stealing something worth less than $950 into a misdemeanor. It did the same thing to some drug crimes. Prop 36 would unwind some of that, reinstating harsher penalties for some theft and drug crimes. Supporters say the measure would cut down on homelessness by forcing unhoused people into drug treatment. Opponents say the measure will waste hundreds of millions of dollars to lock up people who don't pose a danger to society. So vote yes if you want to increase the penalties on shoplifting and drug possession. Vote no if you want to keep things the way they are. To learn more about everything on your 2024 ballot, go to calmatters.org.
Okay, so this one, and we could also do a poll for it. That would be probably the easiest way for people to engage. So with Prop 36, it reclassifies some of the misdemeanors as felonies. It creates a new category of crime, as you can see here in the fourth bullet point, treatment mandated felony. But it's unclear, it's not specified that much in the proposition, how it actually, what this treatment actually looks like, how it's funded. And, you know, if someone goes into the treatment mandated felony and then they fail out of the treatment, does that mean then they go to jail, or things like that? So obviously, you know, at the events I've done so far, people bring up these smash and grabs where people are hitting shops and a lot of gangs of kids and whoever coming in, and they know the $950 number. So they'll steal right up to the limit, $949. And since they can get away with it, there isn't much punishment, then all these stores now have glass in front of, or plexiglass in front of everything that you try to buy. So that's something that people definitely want to see stopping. And then other people say, you know, that's exaggerated, that that's something that the media will focus on because it generates headlines, but it's actually not as big of a problem. A lot of people, one person at one of my events yesterday actually raised their hand and said that his brother is going through some of the treatment provided by the state after he was arrested on some crime, and that it's actually been useful in helping rehabilitate. But overall, if we saw, Governor Gavin Newsom is against it, and part of the reason why he is against it is because the proposition itself doesn't say how this would be funded. And so it doesn't seem like the infrastructure for it is actually set up. So it's hard to tell what would be happening in the meantime. So we have some support, mostly against, and also a bunch of undecided people. Really quick, there are, outside of these three that we focused on right here, there's 7 more propositions, and I would highly recommend going through CalMatters' voter guide. Take your time, learn these, and decide on them for yourself. We try to make it as easy as possible. We give you all the information. And so, yeah, thank you for letting me share about CalMatters' voter guide, and I will pass it back to Nefesha to close us out.
Excellent. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. Let me, there we go. I am going to share my screen one last time just so you all can see our final slides. I appreciate you all joining us again. This next slide is just our resources. If you have not gone to our website, you can check out our CA for the Arts Election Engagement Resource Guide, which has a lot of information. We utilize some tools from other websites and organizations just to share out a lot of resources. Thank you to our field engagement team for doing that. Tracy and Jenica did an excellent job putting this together. We understand that the dates are coming up. We only have a couple more weeks, but there is some effective things that you can do in the interim between now and the actual voting, November 5th, Election Day. Along with that, on our resource page here, all of the links that we just went over, which were shared in the chat. Thank you to Terry from our team for holding it down in the chat. You can see those links. They are also hyperlinked into this spreadsheet, or excuse me, into this, I've been looking at spreadsheets this morning, into this PowerPoint presentation and these slides. And so you'll be able to get access to those as well. Again, thank you to Dan for taking the time to walk us through CalMatters voter guide along with the ballot propositions. If you have any questions for Dan, if you want to share your email in the chat, that would be great. And you can contact Dan directly. If you have any questions for us, you can contact me or Terry, and our team will definitely get back to you. Terry, if you can share my email in the chat, that would be great also. And then our last slide here, just for some more information, is how you can stay connected with us. If you don't get our newsletter already, you can scan the QR with your QR code to sign up. And I'll also share out a hyperlink in the, or excuse me, a link in the follow-up email to sign up for the newsletter if you would like. And to stay tuned with all of our events that are coming up. We have some great ways of staying connected and engaging with CA for the Arts. And right now we're full-fledged and planning for our California Arts and Culture Summit, which I'm looking forward to in April 2025. So if you want to keep up with everything that's happening along with we just announced our grassroots arts advocacy program. And if you'd like to learn more about that, you can definitely contact us as well. I'm going to stop my share, or excuse me, stop my screen share there and just say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Dan. Dan, is there anything else that you want to share out?
Thank you for having me. My email is dhu@calmatters.org. Please stay in touch. If you missed any of the links, Nefesha will be sending it out, but you can also reach me for things from CalMatters.
Excellent. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Hopefully you took a moment to have some lunch or you're about to, and let's stay connected. Thank you, Dan, again. Take care.